You go to the final end of your journey thinking that there's a Wizard of Oz or whatever, and then you find out it was all an illusion. Like, oh, there is no final Aeon. The real final Aeon was the friends you made along the way. Now think about that joke.
It's true.
As soon as I thought it, I'm like, oh, that's dark.
What's up? Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kaysen.
We're here to talk to you about Final Fantasy X for the 13th time.
For the 13th time. Lucky number 13.
Let's see. Today we played up through...
That's like...
basically going back to Bevelle to talk with Micah, and then...
yeah, all that.
The Faith kid with the purple hood. Right around there. Right as you, I actually played up to where you get back on the airship and you're like about to go like the final showdown with Sin, and they're blasting the music, the Hymn of the Faith, and all the people in the world, DBZ style,
rocking out, to
singing the Hymn of the Faith
to the song.
That's about the point where I stopped.
I copied down the lyrics to that hymn, by the way.
Oh, really?
It actually they're actual words.
Oh, really?
Well, they're Japanese words, and I recognize them, but it didn't really make sense until I just looked it up today, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So we'll look into that.
So
all
anyways,
points in between.
That's where we played up to. So let's get started with descending down the back half of Mount Gagazet and into Zanarkand. Like we were saying last time, the sun is setting, signifying the end of the journey, and it's night by the time you actually get down, to off the mountain and basically just outside of the ruins.
Which was the right choice because it looks really cool.
Yeah,
and the fireflies are all glowy and it looks nice.
Oh, well, actually, before the sun sets, it returns us to the first scene of the game.
Yep, where he says, "Let me tell you my story."
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're sitting around the campfire, kind of solemn. No one's really talking.
Now, interesting note about this, the voice actor that played Tidus,
James Arnold Taylor.
He did not know at the recording of that scene that it was so early that it takes place during the gameplay, right? He thought that the narration scenes were a year or two in the future. Oh. And so he actually does a lower pitch in his voice, and you can tell that.
Because he thought he would be older.
Because he thought he was going to be doing a 19, 20-year-old Tidus instead of the 17-ish-year-old Tidus, right?
Yeah.
And so... it wasn't until he got, because he didn't know the full story of the game.
Yeah,
he was reading through the script.
He didn't read the script first.
Yes.
He sort of like, and this allowed him to react to a lot of like the twists in a very genuine way as well.
It's a good way as an actor to have like kind of like a method type reaction to a lot of this stuff. Right. But he comes to it and he was very surprised to learn that it's just right then and there. And it was all these narration parts were him, because it sounds like an inner monologue. That's why we would keep referring to it that way. What it really is him just getting up and telling everyone, "Hey, this is my story. Yeah, I just want to tell you my story." And we get the reason why he does this, which is really funny. Actually, he's just trying to stall.
Yeah.
And that's it. He's like, all right, because at the beginning of the game, it's like, I'm going to tell you my story. This is like a Cranky Kong moment, He's just like, we're getting up here, and I have some valuable insight that I'm going to give to all of you people about the world and life, and I'm going to tell you my important, heartfelt story. And the truth is, he's just like grasping at straws, like, oh, and then this happened. Oh, and then I really didn't like it when that happened. That was not good. And the way it's presented is really heartfelt and beautiful, right? Yeah. But when you see the reason for it, it's like, Tidus, man. And it's so funny because he's like, what else? What else happened? There's got to be something else. And Yuna walks up to him.
Remember you guys, and then she gets up.
But listen to the tone of his voice there.
Yeah,
it's not the low.
Yeah.
Anyways, right. You can tell that James Arnold Taylor has realized he's made a mistake by this point. And I wouldn't even call it a mistake. I really like the way that it's done.
I do too.
But he wouldn't have done it that way. No, had he known what was going on.
That it wasn't actually.
But Yuna's telling him, "Hey, stop! Enough with this story stuff. Like, let's go. We know you're just stalling.
It's time to stop now."
Yeah. And it kind of it casts the narration in a different light, through the whole game up until that point.
Right.
It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's very in character for him to do that.
the music that plays here is phenomenal as you're sort of like going into Zanarkand. It's one of those things, they do this sometimes in RPGs like this where even during the battles, the music continues to play. It doesn't like shift to the battle.
Every now and then, if they want to convey like a different ambience, they do that, and it's very effective.
Yeah, the music just keeps playing through the battles. But the music here is incredible. But I really like just on that first screen as you're walking away from the campfire, like a trope of Final Fantasy is the characters walk into the main character and then it's just everyone in the party's represented by one model.
Yeah.
Probably just a way to save on polygons back in the day that are on screen. But, well, actually that's not true because they were doing that even back on the Super Nintendo and the NES. So anyway, point is, they don't do that just for that first screen. It shows all of them walking together, and it just creates this feeling that they're going into like the end of the journey. It's like the inevitability of that end is coming, and they're all going there. On the next screen, you know, it's just Tidus running through, but I just kind of liked how it just creates a different feeling for this area, this coming into Zanarkand that is really effective. It just really works.
It's like they're just kind of reminding you, hey, everyone's here. You know, it's easy to forget that as you play. Mm-hmm. There was a comment from Zachary Tobin that basically says that. He said that he wanted to draw attention to the song that plays throughout the Zanarkand ruins. Yeah. Just a ton of meaning packed up into it. And the song is called Someday the Dream Will End.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's like understanding what Tidus just learned about the nature of his reality and where he's going to. A dream ending is the world ending for him.
Yes.
You know, it's the end of everything.
You know what's so interesting about that is all the way up to the point where he had that big reveal when he touched the wall of faith.
Yeah.
He's thinking so hard about doing whatever it takes to make sure Yuna doesn't have to sacrifice herself for the journey to be successful.
And it turns out...
And now it's the total reversal.
Yes.
Like he's going to have to do that in order
and he has
for the
to lie
journey
to
be
her.
successful.
He can't tell her that that's what's happening.
Yuna's role became Tidus's role. And
I know, there's a flip. Yeah, there's a flip.
It's just really interesting how the one person who was most adamant that we should not sacrifice somebody in order to succeed, and we find any other way, is willing to accept it in reverse.
It's always different when you're the one in control.
Yeah.
When you're the driver and everyone else is subject to whatever you do, you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah. Anyway, pretty interesting.
That's fascinating. There was another good comment here from JH. He said, in my last run of FF10, I noticed the very first summoner gravesite you encounter on Gagazet mirrors the pile of your party's weapons that you see in the opening shot of the Zanarkand campfire scene. Right. You've got Wakka's ball, which is like the rock, and then you've got Yuna's staff, which is like the big, spike pillar, and then I think you have Tidus' sword as well. Sticking but it looks like a gravestone, at least according to the ones we saw on Mount Gagazet.
That you were kind of seeing as you were going up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I like that. That was a good comment, JH. I figured I'd bring that up here.
Yeah. So as you arrive, there's kind of a domed area that the party's kind of going into, and you're met by somebody who looks like a clergyman of Yevon at first.
Yes. Yeah. And well, he may have been at one point.
At one point. He says, "Journeyer of the long road, name yourself." And Yuna steps up. "I'm the summoner Yuna. I've come from the island of Besaid." And
apparently word has not reached this guy that Yuna is a heretic.
Yeah, not yet. That's the part that's where you start thinking, wait a minute, there's something off about this guy.
At the same time, though, it's like, well, who would have given him the message?
Yeah, who would have come all the way to Zanarkand to do that?
Yeah. Also, where does that guy live? I had a lot of thoughts when we first see him, and then it turns out he's not actually an alive person.
On set.
Yeah.
And I love the way they reveal that too. So
yes,
he says, "Your eyes, my dear, show me the long road you've traveled." And so he just looks at her. "Very good, you've journeyed well. Lady Yunalesca will surely welcome your arrival. Go to her now and bring your guardians with you. Go." And then he walks towards the screen as they go in, and he just sort of slowly disappears.
Yes.
And then the fireflies are sort of...
Now, I was just wondering at this point, is this a rendering trick? Sometimes characters, when they get too close to the camera, will disappear so that you can see your party
through it. Yeah.
I couldn't tell if this was a video game thing, but as you keep walking through the ruins, you see tons of these people and people of the past are constantly appearing in little vignettes, little images all throughout, and it's like, hey, no one that you encounter here is a real person. They're all fake. And
what was interesting is, like, on the way in, I think Waka said something like, "This place looks like the Far Plane" or something.
Ah, yes.
And Aaron responds to him, "Might as well be," or something like that, or pretty close, or anyway. But there are so many Fireflies here that, like, the images of or memories from the past are, like, kind of constantly popping up around them, including Braska Jekt and Aaron's.
Yes, they keep popping up.
Which you get more detail on what happened at the end of their journey, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
So
there's one more thing I have to mention, though, before we get too far. When Riku and Yuna are saying goodbye, I don't know what they're doing, where Riku's trying to convince Yuna to not go. And Yuna's like, "It's all good, but thanks for being there for me," right?
Yes.
And they kind of, have a moment there. In the English, she says, "Thank you." But in the Japanese, she says, "I really like you," is what she says.
You know what's so interesting about that? Is later in this will be next episode, but it's the same thing where they translate "thank you" differently.
Yes, they do that multiple times. Yeah. It'll probably be a separate episode. I actually took a few more translation notes. The translations start changing a lot from this point in the game specifically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of differences, but that's one of them. Yeah, so I just figured I'd bring that up. That might be interesting.
I didn't realize that there was more than one, but there's one almost, I don't want to call it controversial, but, like, people kind of debate.
Kind of towards the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why she says "thank you" in Japanese versus what. Anyways, we'll get to that much later. But
we will.
So once they're inside the structure, they see two ghosts enter. And one of them is talking about, if I can benefit the future of Spira, I'll gladly give my life. And it's the highest honor of a guardian to give their life,
Yes. Yep.
Use my life, Lady Yoken, and rid Spira of sin. So this is one of the old summoners from a long time ago. They're kind of realizing they're seeing a past memory.
Yeah.
Riku, I like during that whole scene, is like hunched over. She's like scared of the ghosts. So I was like laughing at that. Now, this is something I've had like a total reversal of feelings about since previous playthroughs. I started even to write down in my notes, the camera here is absolutely psychotic and it's so distracting.
Yeah.
Because it's like flying up like directly into Lulu's bust, and then it like does this really crazy flip and turn, and like it zooms over here to Aaron, and it's just like doing this really erratic movement. And I was like, this is like whack. Like why on previous playthroughs? And I was starting to take that note here. And then I was like, wait a minute, because I think what I typed was, I have no idea what this camera is meant to convey. And then I stopped to think about it. I was like, okay, let me try really hard to think about why they did this.
Yeah.
And I think I figured it out. These are fireflies flying around them, taking the memory of what they're doing. We are in the POV of a firefly sort of erratically flying around.
I had no thought to that.
Like this.
Like Navi at the beginning of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
She runs into the fence.
Right. Yeah. It's like that kind of thing, and they're recording this discussion that we're having because they record everything. They record every memory of every person that comes in here. So these are fireflies sort of, because I noticed it wasn't just here in this conversation, it's also, it's like used throughout this whole place. These camera movements that are just like,
Yeah.
And
I like that. I like that a lot.
I believe that the reason they did that is because they're meant to convey fireflies are like recording us right now. And it's like they're the camera. The fireflies are the camera.
So they just go around and absorb the consciousnesses of everything around them, and they just kind of recreate the image, and that's how you project using them. I think that's a really good observation. I think that's probably true.
Because that style of camera move is used nowhere else in the game other than here.
Yeah.
And so that to me has got to be the reason why they are
that.
doing that.
I think that's
because
good.
it's got to be purposeful if it's not used anywhere else. It's not
Exactly.
Just, oh,
It's
my
like,
style of
we
camera.
let the intern do the camera work for this scene.
No, of course not, right? So
Exactly.
that's why I think it's so erratic. The camera is so erratic in the scene.
Okay.
At least it makes sense to me as a reason. But Aeon does say here, this dome is filled with fireflies. It's like one gigantic sphere. People's thoughts remain here forever.
Yep.
So that's what the fireflies are doing. They're recording everything that's happening. As you kind of continue inside, you actually see a scene with Seymour as a child.
It took me a minute to realize that was him.
Yeah.
But because his hair, instead of having the big
It's like short.
Kingdom Hearts things, he's got like shorter ones. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
He's begging his mother not to become a faith. And in this case, a faith for the final summoning, like the final Aeon faith.
Yeah.
That's what his mother's here to do, and he's trying to like convince her not to do it. He's like crying, right? And there's got to be another way, he's saying. The same way that Titus and Aeon were saying.
And even Aeon, yes.
There's got to be another way. There's got to be another way.
Yeah.
And his mother says, there is no other way. Use me and defeat sin. Only then will the people accept you. So it's almost like
Oh, she almost had a different reason
Seymour
for doing it.
had come here with his mother,
Yeah.
like his mother was his guardian or something, and he was going to be the summoner to defeat sin. And she was going to be his final Aeon. That's what it feels like to me, but obviously it didn't go that way.
No, because he didn't die and the summoner dies.
Right. One thing that you might want to keep in mind here is that there are optional Aeons to get in the game.
Yeah.
Like Yojimbo we talked about last time.
Yojimbo, yeah.
One of them is Anima,
Right.
which was the summon that Seymour was using earlier in the game.
Yep.
You can get that Aeon at the Baj Temple, which is the very first place Titus fell into when he came into Spira, the ruined sort of temple there, right? You can return there with the airship after basically the entire section of what we're talking about today. So at this point, we couldn't have seen it yet.
Okay.
And I had just played up to the point where I got the airship and then I stopped.
Ah, I see.
This would have been the point where I would have gone to collect all the
Everything
optional
else.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
So that's why I have not seen this cutscene yet with Anima. But know that there's a continuation of this little scene between Seymour and his mother.
Yeah, there's more to it, but it's hidden content.
But it's optional content at the Baj Temple when you go get the Anima summon.
Yes, there is a secret about who the Anima is,
Yes.
who the faith is,
Yes.
and how it all kind of ties into Seymour's story.
But what we see in this scene is Seymour as a boy, crying, begging his mother not to go through with becoming a faith.
Yes. Yeah,
She wants to willingly sort of become a faith. She's saying that this is the only way and things like that, and he's begging her, there's got to be another way.
It's the only way that, because Seymour's being half Guado, this is before the time where the Guado were accepted, right? I think Jiskel,
I would think so,
Jiskel was, I think, the first like Guado to be a maester, right? And where the races
and brought in
welcomed
Yevon
him
to their
in.
culture.
Exactly.
Right.
And so this was before that, I believe, or around that time.
Yeah.
In which case, Seymour's mother felt like she needed to do stuff to make sure that everyone really liked her son. So it was kind of self-sacrificial, but in a, I don't know.
In the hope that her son would be
We already know
accepted.
Seymour's screwed up, right?
Yes.
And so it didn't work, but that was, her mother's perspective was, hey, I'm going to stop being your mom to be a faith, and that will be good for you. And that was her thinking. And I wouldn't argue that it turned out very well.
We have just a very small piece of this story at this point. There will be more to it when you go to Baj Temple. So maybe make sure you do that if you want to see.
Yes, do that, and then we'll talk about it next episode.
We'll talk about it next time. Anyways, pretty interesting little scene there. But then you see Braska Aeon inject. Orin's resolve has totally failed by the time that they've gotten into Zanarkand itself. He had alluded to this back on Gagazet, where it was starting to fail as they were entering, but now it's like completely gone. He just doesn't think that they should do it anymore. He keeps trying to convince Braska not to do it. Braska says, Aeon, I'm honored that you care for me so, but I have come to kill grief itself. I really liked that line. I've come to kill grief itself. And this is actually something, remember this for when Yuna's talking to Yunalesca about why her father did what he did.
Yeah.
I will defeat sin and lift the veil of sorrow covering Spira. So his reason for being there is to kill grief itself, to end sorrow. That's the reason he's here, right? Okay, then you go through the Cloister of Trials. You fight a pretty cool boss. I don't know if you have any notes on any of this before continuing on after the big boss fight. No?
Nope.
Okay. Then you finally arrive at the Hall of the Final Summoning. Yuna goes down like an elevator. And we hear Jekt, like we just hear his voice saying, huh? What do you mean no final Aeon? And then she comes back up and is like, guys, like, get over here.
You know what's funny? This is the idea is like, what, like you go to the final end of your journey thinking that there's a Wizard of Oz or whatever, and then you find out it was all an illusion. Like, oh, there is no final Aeon.
Yeah,
but the joke to that is, oh, the real final Aeon was the friends you made along the way. Now think about that joke.
It's true.
As soon as I thought it, I'm like, oh, that's dark. The real final Aeon is
true.
Your best friend.
Holy fetch, that's
you
crazy.
have to kill.
That's messed up, dude.
It's screwed up.
Well, yeah, because Zayon was the first final Aeon, and he was Yunalesca's husband.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
so
deep.
They all go down together, and there is no Faith there. And the guy, the Yevon clergyman-looking guy who disappeared before, he comes in to kind of explain it. It says, the statue lost its powers of faith long ago. It is Lord Zayon, the first faith of the final summoning. What you see before you is all that remains of him. Lord Zayon his soul is gone.
It's just his armor, right?
Yeah.
And the armor would represent like the shell, like his shell is what's left.
Right.
And then you could parallel that with sin being the husk, right?
Yeah.
The husk of sin.
The armor of Yevon.
Yeah. Exactly. Is that really him, or is it is all that remains his husk? But his husk is animate and kills people. So.
Yeah. And they're all freaking out, like, what do you mean there's no final Aeon?
Yeah.
And he's like, fear not, Lady Yunalesca will show you the path. The final Aeon will be yours. The summoner and the final Aeon will join powers. Go to her now. Inside, the lady awaits.
Yeah, so what I got here, he no longer exists. That's because he becomes sin.
Yeah.
Then when sin is killed, he's gone.
Yeah.
And then he's replaced by the new one.
Yeah.
So the new faith never can be in a sealed, away in this little thing.
Because that faith has to...
Yeah. They become sealed away inside sin.
Fuse with, like, Yevon and sin.
Exactly.
Right? So that's why it's empty. And every time the new one comes, it fuses with sin, which is what happened to Jekt. So Riku and Tidus are confronting Aaron, like, why didn't you tell us this? You knew this the whole time, you didn't say anything.
This is the question I asked last episode.
He says, if I told you the truth, would that really have stopped you from coming?
Right.
It might have.
Maybe.
It wouldn't have stopped Yuna, probably. I don't know. And no one's going to, like, give up, guarding Yuna. It wouldn't have stopped Yuna, which means it wouldn't have stopped anyone else.
Right, because they all follow her.
So you go inside, Yunalesca meets you, and she congratulates Yuna for completing the pilgrimage, asks her to choose which of her guardians will become the faith of the final summoning. And her dialogue here, there must be a bond between chosen and summoner, for that is what the final summoning embodies. The bond between husband and wife, mother and child, or between friends. If that bond is strong enough, its light will conquer sin. 1,000 years ago, I chose my husband Zayon as my faith. Our bond was true, and I obtained the final Aeon. There is nothing to fear. You will soon be freed of worry and pain. For once you call forth the final Aeon, your life will end. Death is the ultimate and final liberation.
Yeah.
Your father Braska chose this path.
Yunalesca sounds a touch like Seymour, don't you think?
More than a touch like Seymour.
Yeah. Like, wait a second, if death is the ultimate liberation, why are you doing any of this?
I know. Why not?
Why are you battling death?
I know.
Yeah.
So then we see another scene. because she kind of goes in the door, and so we see another scene where between the past Oren, Braska, and Jekt, where they're trying to decide if they're really going to go through with this. And he's like pleading with Braska not to do it. And Jekt offers to become the Faith for the final summoning willingly.
Right. Because he has no hope of going back to Zanarkand.
He can't go back.
Yeah, and so at that point he's like, well, what do I have to live for? All he wanted to live for was his son.
Yeah.
And the best he can do for his son at this point is help other people and try to be a good person. You know?
This was also a comment, forgive me, I don't remember the commenter from last week's video, who was asking a question about if Spira, or if Zanarkand is physically in Spira out in the ocean somewhere, like why couldn't Tidus just go back there or something? We're going to get more like in detail into answering that question in probably the very final episode. So next week, episode 14, is going to be like the end of the game, but I think we'll do one more after that, where we'll kind of revisit the first scene and some things that we've been talking about we're wanting to do. And we'll get into like a more in-depth explanation for this, because I have a feeling there's some answers there in the Ultimania that go further than this. But what we at least know from the text that we played today, after this scene is over, this whole Yunalesca part's over, and Oren is explaining to Tidus why he came to watch over him, because Jekt asked him to. He said something like, death has its advantages. Like, for one, I could ride Sin and get into Dream Zanarkand.
Back to Zanarkand, exactly.
So that insinuates to me the only way to get back there is to be dead or unsent. If you're alive, I guess, at least that's what that tends to insinuate. Again, I think there will be a more in-depth explanation later that we'll research and get into. But I found that line very interesting. So Jekt could not go back. He realized that he had no hope of going back.
Yeah.
Or at least he had given up hope that he could go back. But the key is to be able to go there with Sin. Sin has to carry you into the place. Yeah. Right? So you can't just like, go back in the ocean and swim back into Dream Zanarkand. Like, Sin has to be the one to take you there. And it seems that Oren was able to do that because he was dead. He was unsent, and he rode Sin. And I'm sure Jekt being Sin had something to do with that too. I have this feeling that, like, and we sort of alluded to this, again, this is more theory territory again, but like the Faith like hacked Sin by getting their dream character to be Sin.
It was a Trojan horse. They did a Trojan horse and it worked.
So they have a guy on the inside kind of a thing. And so anyways, there's a whole aspect of that to it. But point is, Jekt couldn't go back. He realized that, so that's why he's decided to become the Faith. But I liked that he says his dream was to turn Tidus into a star blitzball player. He's like regretting that he didn't have the ability to be able to go back and do that. And he wanted to show him the view from the top.
From the top, as the star.
But now he knows he can never go back home, so he thinks that by fighting Sin with Braska and by becoming the Faith for the final summoning, that it will give his life meaning. Yeah. So he's realized by this point in his character progression, his character, not progression, his character arc, that the life he lived in Zanarkand as this sort of like alcoholic, like star blitzball player, vain person was a meaningless life. And now he's kind of like wanting to make his life have a purpose to it. And so this is how he's going to do that, right? Oren is saying a lot of the same things that Tidus and Riku have been saying for a while. The younger Oren in this cutscene. There must be another way. We'll think of something. Again, the camera's doing that same sort of erratic movement. This is, like I said, I feel like it's Firefly sort of recording the scene. Oren tries to tell him that Sin always comes back. And that they're throwing their lives away for nothing. And it was interesting that Braska says, but there's always a chance it won't come back this time. So Braska still believes in the teachings of Yevon.
Yes.
And we're going to learn from Yunalesca here very shortly that the teachings of Yevon are a false tradition, completely false tradition.
Yeah.
And I love how Jecht says here,
Yeah, after the memories.
I understand what you're saying, Aaron. I'll find a way to break the cycle.
Ah, I see.
And Aaron says, you have a plan? And Braska says, Jecht. And he says, trust me, I'll think of something. And
Yes.
it's funny because he has no idea, just like Titus. I have no idea, but I'll find a way. I'll find a way. But it's cool because like he was able to find a way because he became Sin.
I know.
He became Sin,
And
which
he was
allowed
able
him to
kind
go
of work
back to
things
Zanarkand,
from the inside. Yeah.
get his son and bring him
Yes.
out. Like he was able to find a way because he became Sin.
Yeah.
He just didn't realize that was what was about to happen. So I kind of liked that line. I'll find a way to break a cycle, and he did. He really did when he became Sin. But Aaron, after I love how he runs up and starts to like try to cut or like slash at his younger self. Like, oh,
how did you let them
like,
do
how
that?
did you let this happen?
Yeah.
And he says, and the cycle went on.
And nothing changed.
Yep, nothing changed at all.
Oh, wait. In English, he says, and so the cycle went on. In Japanese, he says, and nothing changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Titus here is trying to insist even further. They'll break the cycle this time. Waka asks him how.
And he's like, got nothing.
I don't know.
Yes.
But we're going to find a way. Lulu volunteers to become the faith for the final summoning. Waka does. He's just like, that's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
You'd bring a calm, and then what? That won't break the cycle. You're just feeding into this. Waka and Lulu try to tell him that it's impossible to break the cycle. Like, if you want everything, you'll end up with nothing.
If you want everything, you'll end up with nothing. And that's so true, unless you're in a movie or a game, right?
Yes.
But in life, that's so true. It's like bowling a 7-10 split right down the middle, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't pick between the two, so you just go in the middle and you miss both.
Yep. I love Titus's response. It is so childlike. But I want everything.
But I want everything. Yeah.
And I like how Waka calls him out. Now you're just being childish.
Exactly.
But then I like his response to that. I give up. So what would an adult do then? They know they can just throw away a summoner, that they can do whatever they like. You're right, I might not even have a chance, but no way am I going to just stand here and let Yuna go. And what Aaron said about there being a way, I think it's true. And Riku says, you'll think of something? And he says, yes, I'll go ask Yunalesca. She's got to know something.
Which is genius. I wonder how many of the summoners do you think had a conversation with Yunalesca about anything?
None.
I would guess none.
Because they all bought into the teachings of Yevon.
Where it's like, hey, so what really happens? And it's amazing how upfront Yunalesca is about everything.
Yeah.
But
it's actually so surprising that she is that it's almost hard to believe that she would do that. Why would she tell the truth?
That's a great question because it's the end of the game and we want answers. but like no. What I'm about to say is wrong. I already know it's wrong because of Aaron. I would guess that when you're an unsent, you just have less inhibitions, I guess. But that's not true because Aaron is very secretive of everything.
Yunalesca wants the cycle to continue.
So why would
wouldn't she just tell them the teachings of Yevon's version? Yes, this might be the last time.
Now,
it could be you who finally defeats sin.
I will say that it didn't bother me because I thought I had a way of getting around that, and I don't think I do because the fiends are very secretive, like Micah, Seymour, and Aaron. So it's not just that once you're dead, you just divulge information. That's not it. Yeah. So you have a very good point there, and
it's like the fact that she
like late
just
game.
tells them the truth. You're right.
We want answers, man.
We need the reveal.
Yes.
But it doesn't make a ton of sense to me that Yunalesca would do this if her
it
goal is to keep the cycle going.
What would have been better would have been we see more Firefly images, visions of Aaron afterwards saying, hey, but what about this? There's a paradox here. How can this be resolved? Or something like that instead of her just divulging the information.
So if she were to give to them, let's say the Yevon's teachings answer, This could be the final time, and maybe sin will be defeated forever.
And if we've atoned, and then it will
But then
go
we
away.
see young Oren in a flashback. But
Saying,
what about
"You
this?"
lied, yeah.
And it's getting into an argument that reveals the actual truth.
Yes,
and they're
where
like,
she's like, "I'm going to kill you now," and
Yeah.
the only reason I would answer you, you know, there is that aspect to it, though. How many people has Yunalesca killed? How many summoners? We know that by extra means,
by
like
sending out
tools.
fiends
Yeah,
and
we know she
challenges.
kills people that way. But how many people has she personally killed? Because once you step into that room, that plane, the platform, and the stars and stuff, and you
Yeah.
talk to her, can you ever leave there? Ever? Unless
like,
you kill
has
her.
a summoner ever tried giving up at that point?
Because if a summoner asks her the questions and she tells them the truth, and then the summoner leaves, she kills them. She's
Yeah.
like, you can't leave. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah,
Are
right.
you going to do this or not? Okay, then you're dead. How many? Because if anyone's asked those questions and not gone through with it, she just kills them because that's what she tried to do with us.
I suppose there
So that
have
could be it.
been.
So she's probably, because here's the weird thing. At the very end, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think it's important. At the very end, after we do away with Yunalesca, she doesn't seem like that horrible of a person. In fact, she even apologizes to Zaun for Zaun. Okay. Sounds like Zion when you pronounce it that way. Japanese, it's Zaun. but she apologizes and says, "I'm sorry for everything," and she really was, because we're like, there's another way, and she's like, there is no other way. Like, Yunalesca was very adamant that she was being very honest. I don't know, I feel like casting her as just a bad guy or a bad character or an evil character is incorrect, given what we learn about her after we're done fighting her. She's doing her best to preserve life in Spira. And if that means sacrificing a few people to, like, sacrifice 20 people so that 20,000 can live, she's making that choice, right?
Yeah.
For everyone else, which isn't right, but she's trying to do what's right because she doesn't know how to defeat sin. It's not like we went in there and we found out that she knew all along how to defeat sin, but she just wants to feast on the bodies of summoners. It was, she doesn't know how to, and this is the best that she has. And when you look at her in that light, the fact that she's honest and forthcoming maybe makes a little bit more sense. It's not so like she is honest, but she's going to do what it takes to preserve life in Spira, and if that means killing you, then so be it. She's chosen that path, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that could help resolve that a little bit.
So it's like, maybe from her perspective, what's the harm in telling the truth? Because if they reject it, then I'll just kill them, and the next summoner who comes up will be the one to
It's not like they're ever going to get out of there.
Yeah.
Except, you know, we do. But
Yeah.
we're different. We bowl the 7-10 split, and we hit both pins. Right down the middle. Well, I talk about this later. There's a fun analogy there.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say here about Titus saying, I'll go ask Yunalesca, she's got to know something.
Yeah, that's so smart, though.
Riku says, you really think she's going to help? And he says, I don't know, but I have to try. This is my story. It'll go the way I want it, or I'll end it here. And
he says that several times throughout.
As he said that, I was like, I didn't like that.
No,
I didn't like that.
It's wrong. And someone
It's
called him
selfish.
out, right? Doesn't someone call him out on that?
Yes, Yuna does.
Good.
And she says, wait, you say it's your story, but it's my story too, you know? Like, it's almost like he's trying to take the agency away from the other characters, right? No, this is going to go my way. And she
He
says...
only does this after having that vision on Mount Gagazet of learning that he's a dream.
Right.
Now all of a sudden he's like, this is my story, and it's going to end how I want. He's taking charge of it, you know?
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing that before.
Yeah. So she says, it's my story too, you know. It would be so easy to let my fate just carry me away, following the same path my whole life through, but I know I can't. What I do with no regrets. So she's taking her agency back from him.
Yes.
And I like that. I like that they did that.
Yes. He's like, I'm going to save you. And she's like, save me from making my own choice on my own behalf.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But I do like that when she goes in to meet with Yunalesca, who asks her to make a choice about which guardian will become the faithful final summoning, she's like, hold on, like, just tell me this first. Like, can sin actually be defeated forever?
Yes. And Yunalesca says no.
No.
Yes.
Sin is eternal.
Yes.
Sin cannot
The
be
Japanese
defeated.
word was immortal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where Waka starts to be like, whoa, wait a second.
I know, because the atonement. See, you know what's funny? That's almost a catch-22
Yeah.
with Yunalesca here, where she's giving honest information. If it weren't for Waka bringing up that, I don't know, but asking Yunalesca, can sin be destroyed? If she said, yes, there is some other way.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. She would have then said, yes, through,
as the
you
teachings
might
say,
be the one.
when you've atoned,
Yes.
then sin can be defeated forever. If
But
she had
she's
just
choosing
said,
to be honest.
if she had just said the Yevon's teachings versions, they would have been, oh, okay,
So
I choose Lulu, and then it would have gone through with it. Unless Titus decided
Yunalesca
to
screwed up, man.
fight, anyways. Yunalesca messed up.
She done messed up. But she strikes me as possibly actually
Honest
to a fault, actually an honest
Person.
person.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Also a very powerful person.
Yeah, and Waka says, but if we atone for our crimes, sin will
but-
stop
but-
coming back someday. It's going to be gone, yeah? And she's like, basically, she insinuates with her, she asks a question, but she insinuates with the question that mankind can never attain that kind of purity. Do you really think mankind will ever
Yes.
attain that kind of purity?
So it's like, yes, that's possible, but also that's totally not possible.
Yes.
It's probably the least possible thing you can ever think
Do you
of.
really think people will ever?
Yes.
And this is where Lulu gets
Okay.
upset. This cannot be the teaching state that we
Yes.
can exorcise sin with complete atonement. It's been our only hope all these years.
Chapter 14, verse 33 clearly says,
Yeah, right?
yeah.
Open up the...
And it's like, no.
The
And here's
scriptures.
another thought. How well has Yunalesca actually kept up with the current teachings of the Church of Yevon?
Good question.
And how, because we know that the teachings didn't start day one. Like the church evolved. The Guado weren't even part of it. You know, a lot of the hardcore, top-down oppressive doctrines seem to me to have come pretty recently, I think, especially
Yeah.
with when the Guado show up and they kind of alter the church a little bit. It seems to have evolved to this point, and nobody ever goes to Zanarkand but the summoners, and it doesn't seem like anyone gets to talk to Yunalesca for that long. So she may not even really know the current, up to date. What are they saying these days? Oh, the atonement? Oh, yeah, that's stupid,
Yeah.
But she doesn't know that, but he was taught that was it his whole life. She's been around for 1,000 years, right? So I just question whether or not she even was aware that, are they teaching that now? Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
So she's just given her answers,
Now, I really like this next line from Yunalesca. Hope is comforting. It allows us to accept fate, however tragic it might be. That sentence, from a certain point of view,
Point of view?
is the entire point of religion.
Yeah,
It's
to a
a
large
way
extent,
for people
yes.
to cope with their mortality.
That's what Sigmund Freud said. That's Freud's
Yeah.
conclusion with that, yeah.
Right.
That it's a death anxiety is resolved through
With-
religious belief.
With hope, whether it's a false hope or not, or whether it's a made-up story or not.
Right.
It gives people the
Here's-
ability to cope with their inevitable death, right? Anyway, I felt like that line in particular
the
was kind of tied into the part of the thematic sort of core of this
Yes.
game. And
Of like what is...
the Yevon side of the thematic core and
Yeah.
the possible criticism of religion that's going on in this game.
yes.
That's probably done to, in my opinion, with a lot more effect than, say, like the
Yes.
trope of JRPG.
I thought of that.
the church is always
yeah.
evil thing.
As they have this discussion, I'm like, they actually give like relatively thought out and not overly simplistic like answers here. Like it's actually a pretty, it was an interesting conversation that they have here at the end.
Yeah.
And Yunalesca saying that the religion helps you give hope. The question being is it wrong that stories give humans hope?
Right.
Is it wrong to give people hope based on a story because all stories are, by their nature, omitting 99.999999999% of all the information that could have otherwise been included in that story?
Yeah.
Then the question of was that good or bad, is that right or wrong, comes into it.
Yes.
And that's where they're having this gray area kind of discussion here. I think it's fascinating.
If
It was well done. They treated it well.
I don't know how we would determine this, but let's say it's true that the majority of people cannot accept their mortality without a tremendous amount of sorrow and anxiety and living a life that feels purposeless and what's the point of this? If that's the attitude of the majority of people towards that fact of death. Is it wrong?
That's a rough society.
To teach them that there's actually not a real death, there's life after death, and you create this whole story or religion around it that give them hope that when they die, they don't actually die, and they'll see their loved ones again, and you can be reunited. Is that wrong if the majority of human beings can't accept their mortality? Probably not, but how do we determine whether or not people can or cannot?
And who has the right to make that decision for everyone else? Like, oh, I'm the one, I'm Maester Micah, or Yunalesca, or whoever. I get to decide that nobody gets to cope with their own death in their own way or whatever. That, but in some ways, that is the role of government, and this is what you talked about last episode about the dangers of theocracy in general, where it's like, hey, you mix meaning with government, and all of a sudden your meaning becomes enforced at the point of a gun, and it's like, well, hold on, dude. What if I don't find meaning like that, you know?
Yeah, right.
But when you mix religion and government, the coercive aspect shows up. But that's what they did here. Where it's totally like, well, you have to coerce.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, well, what about the people who are going to disrupt the religion that's giving so many people hope? Well,
we'll
how is our
funnel
society
them
without
into
hope?
A crusader program where they go die fighting
Find
sin.
a way to imprison them or kill them or get them to kill themselves.
Separate the wheat from the tares.
Exactly.
Get those tares out of there and burn them.
Well, it's a judgment. Yeah, you separate, you accept the good and push away the evil.
Yep.
Anyways, very fascinating discussion.
I felt like that whole thing was embodied in that line that you said. Hope is comforting. It allows us to accept fate, however tragic it might be.
However tragic it might be.
That's the role of religion, really, is to help people cope with death.
Yes, yeah. What is it? You lay up treasures in heaven. You sacrifice in this life so that you can have treasure in the next life.
You have this hope that something's going to be after death, and that gives you the ability to live your life with purpose.
And the reason to sacrifice in this life at all. Anything.
Right.
For anyone, you know.
Right.
Now, what is it?
This is not to say, again, I started this out with, from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view.
I'm not trying to offend anybody out there who's religious, or even to really contradict whether or not it's true. I'm not trying to tell you that. I'm just trying to say...
Or to say whether it's possible to not believe stories given the way that humans' brains are.
Yeah, right. I'm not making any kind of statement of that kind. Yeah. I'm just thinking it's an interesting thing to think about. That's it. All right, so Titus is about to run up to like yell at Yunalesca at this point, but then like Auron's former self-ghost comes through.
That was done so well.
Did the same thing.
Yeah, that was done so well.
At the same time and ran up. I liked that a lot.
I loved that. And it was like, whoa, not Jack, previous Auron and Titus, they were like the same
really similar
person.
And
so similar. Auron was even kind of clumsy back when he was younger, you know? He was kind of not this super hardcore, you know, samurai that we see now. He was different, you know?
And it actually ties together on Gagazet when he was kind of chuckling and he says to Titus, "You remind me of myself." At the time he said that, I was like, how?
I know, in what way?
But now I see it. I see what he sees in Titus that reminds him of himself. He was doing exactly, asking the same questions, confronting Yunalesca in the same way.
And over, what would you call it? Letting his rage take over and you know, making rash decisions like that. Like, I'm going to kill Yunalesca.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Yunalesca says Braska believed in Yevon's teaching. No, this is Auron. Braska believed in Yevon's teachings and died for them. Jekt believed in Braska and gave his life for him. They chose to die because they had hope. And Yunalesca's response to that is more or less the same idea. Like, hope is comforting and hope, people need hope and that sort of thing.
Yes.
He tries to attack her, and that's when he was killed. Now, not completely, because he crawled kind of down Mount Gagazet
all the way down the mountain.
But he died
crazy
right as he met Kimari and said, please go take this girl to Besaid Island.
And probably also, as he was put in the inn where that person mentioned seeing him. Rin saw him. So Kimari likely took him to the inn, laid him down, left. Rin saw him, and then he disappeared the next day.
Yep.
No one knows where he went.
Yep. And so the wounds he suffered from his attempted fight with Yunalesca
they were horrible, apparently.
Oh yeah, she says they died. They chose to die because they had hope. That's what she said in response to it.
Right.
Yevon's teachings, this is her again, Yunalesca, I think. Yevon's teachings and the final summoning give the people of Spira hope. Without hope, they would drown in their sorrow. Now choose who will be your faith. She's almost like explaining this as if it's like, yeah, we all know this, right? We know this, right? Like this is
Yunalesca, I'm saying she may not be aware to the extent that Yevon has kind of obscured the true function of the actual.
That's an interesting possibility.
I would guess that.
Yeah, it's like
who goes to Zanarkand? Like very few people actually make it to her.
It's because she like explains it, but she does it without emotion or without any like real understanding of how this is going to affect these people.
Yes.
And then she tries to move on. Like, okay, so choose someone now.
Well, it's so funny. Right? Think how much the world has changed in the last 20 years of what's acceptable to say in public or what.
Sure.
And now times that by 50, whatever, get it to 1,000. And it's like, even 20 years ago, like what she's saying stuff that was very acceptable 1,000 years ago.
Probably,
but it's like, holy cow, man.
So Yuna says no one, so she's not going to choose anybody.
Yeah.
I would have gladly died. I live for the people of Spira and would have gladly died for them, but no more. The final summoning is a false tradition that should be thrown away. And Yunalesca says, no, it's our only hope. Your father sacrificed himself to give that hope to people so they would forget sorrow.
Yeah.
And as we heard from Braska earlier, I came to kill grief itself.
Yes.
He's not fighting to help people forget their sorrow with this false hope thing. And that's when she says, wrong. My father wanted to make Spira's sorrow go away, not just cover it up with lies. And Yunalesca says, sorrow cannot be abolished. It's meaningless to try. Even just beyond sin, it's like life just is suffering.
Yeah, okay, the sin won't kill them. Now they just die of cancer when they're old.
Yeah.
Like, okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Well, to make a moral judgment, you can't objectively say whether that's better.
Right.
It's all subjective at that point. Well, they live longer, so that means it's better. Like, well, maybe not.
Yuna says, my father, I loved him, so I will live with my sorrow. I will live my own life. That's what's his final message to her in the sphere, remember? Live your life your way kind of thing.
Yes.
So she's taking that to heart here. And she's saying, my path is going to be to live with my sorrow, not try to cover it up with the lies of Yevon, right? I will defeat sorrow in his place. I will stand my ground and be strong. I don't know when it will be, but someday I will conquer it, and I will do it without false hope. And this is where Yunalesca says it's better to die in hope than live in despair.
Wait, let me think about that. It's better to die. Oh, okay, there you go.
Die in
better
hope
to
than
die
live
in
in
hope
despair.
than live in despair.
Yeah. This is exactly Seymour's philosophy. Exactly the same.
Yes. That's almost like you either die young or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain, right?
Yes, right.
Or you either die from sin attacking your village like a tsunami and pretty quickly, or the vaporizing gun blast where it's like basically instant when the Crusaders were fighting him.
Yeah.
Or you live to get cancer and you die a slow, very painful death over the course of like 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's the same question as before, which is morally superior. But the bigger question is who gets to decide that, me or you?
Yeah.
Like if it's my life, then I'd rather die slowly of cancer over the years than who are you to tell me that an instant death when I'm younger is preferable? Yeah.
Yeah. So she says, let me be your liberator. Now, I love the music for this boss fight, and particularly Auron's speech as it sort of builds right up to it. Now, this is it. Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow.
This is the real reason why Auron is doing this, why he wanted to go on the pilgrimage
Vengeance
again.
on Yunalesca.
He was like, all right, Yuna, I've got like 10 friends now. Let's go. Like, you beat me one-on-one, but...
He's come back to finish.
He
what
did,
He tried
and he
to
didn't
do 10
hint
years ago.
to any of that on his way up.
Yep.
But now it's just all laid bare.
This is his moment.
Yes.
This is Auron's moment.
Exactly.
It's finally come full circle. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands. And then they fight Lady Yunalesca.
Yep.
I like. They all kind of have a line. This is a
very
anime tropey thing where everyone's got to have something to say first.
Yes.
But there's a couple good lines in, and I really loved Waka's. I can't believe we're gonna fight Lady Yunalesca. Give me a break. I laughed so hard.
It's like he's come so far, though. He's really come so far.
He has, but it's just like exasperating at this point. Like, oh my gosh, we killed a maester. We became like traitors to Yevon.
Excommunicated.
And like I had to like become friends with the Albed and fly in a Machina airship.
That's right.
And it's just like the last straw. He's just so done with this. Like, I can't believe we have to fight Lady Yunalesca. Give me a break.
That's so funny, man. That's
so funny.
Good. That's so good.
I really like it. And Lulu, of course, is like, well, you could just run away right now. And he's like, nah. I could never forgive myself
these guys.
for, abandoning my friends at this point. I've come way too far, right?
I like the cameras kind of flickering a little bit as it's showing everyone. There's a bit of static
like a
kind of going on.
Kind of thing,
There's a reason for that. I kind of had to think about this, but there's like a static effect right before the fight, and it feels to me almost like reality breaking down, which is true, which it is breaking down. The reality of their world is being torn apart, and it's a good example of what's happening in their minds and hearts right now. Right, they're about to destroy the world, and a lot of Final Fantasy games end with this like reality breaking moment that is strange, and something comes in that just kind of alters your perception of reality. But in order for that to happen, it needs to break your current perception, and they're kind of breaking, and reality's breaking, right? I wrote here, they are about to destroy the world, bowl a 7-10 split, and hope that if they bowl the ball hard enough, they can throw it right down the middle, break the entire building, and destroy the whole game in the process.
I like that analogy.
Where it's like, I can't do a 7-10 split. You kidding me? Like, you're going to force me to
So I'm just going to throw the bowling ball at your face?
Screw the game. Break the machine that picks up the pins. Yeah. Just break everything and just like ruin the game. Just clear the chessboard and say, screw you guys.
False choice.
I can't win. You put me in an unwinnable situation. I'm breaking the game. I'm making new rules. Right?
Yeah. Oh, and then Titus says, this is our story. Now
there
let's
we
see
go.
this through together.
Oh, that's so big because
I love
that's huge for reasons.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit here. It's good for reasons that Yunalesca talks about after the fight.
Yes.
But I do have to bring up the fact that Yunalesca is basically naked.
Yes.
So Yunalesca's nakedness here, in my opinion, it serves a really good purpose, actually. Her nakedness represents the religion in a single image, I think. Right, so you have...
Oh, like Yevon laid bare almost.
Yes,
thing,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Their nakedness has been uncovered. And that's almost how I interpreted it visually and symbolically as I was hearing her be so honest about all the teachings. Where it's like, it's all being laid bare. Like, that's what she does. She lays bare the precious things that she has,
right?
in a manner of speech, right?
Yeah.
So that's what she is doing for the church. There is beauty in the female form, and so you have the beauty of hope, right? The beauty of the religion is also laid bare, where it's like you have the hope and the light that comes from that. You also have everything else that comes with it. And it's all just there, right? There's the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, the evil.
You can kind of see
the
that
good
in as she evolves through the fight too, where like the tentacles, but
the
then
Medusa,
it becomes the Medusa head,
basically,
with the snakes.
Yes.
So you see like the hidden ugliness,
and that becomes laid bare as well. That's a good.
Yeah.
I didn't write that down, but that's a good observation as
Right.
well. Yeah, so it's the true intentions of Yevon. It's what's behind the cloaks and the mirrors and the smoke and the Wizard of Oz, what's he behind? Behind the curtain.
The curtain.
Yeah. And it's all just opened up, just like exposed it all to the world, right? The robes, the robes, I even put this, what's behind the cloaks and sashes and robes of the maesters, right?
Yeah.
Yunalesca, though, she's fascinating. She has golden eyes and silver hair, right? So the feminine is represented by the moon. Yunalesca is Yuna, which is the hibiscus, which is the night, right? We've often seen the Yunalesca is represented by the moon, and on the map of Spira, you can see it. And then Zaon is the sun, right? And so you get that kind of imagery here between the moon and the sun. But, and I wrote this down really well here, but I've got a few more symbolism things to get through, right? She has golden eyes, but Aeon is dressed in golden armor, basically. And so you have the sun and the moon, but the sun is more or less being reflected in her eyes. It's not, she doesn't have any elements of the sun or gold on her. I think she maybe does have some gold like around her waist or something. But in an alchemical sense, we have the sun and the moon here. But the fact that she still loves Aeon.
Yes.
Aeon, her eyes are the color of Aeon, right? Aeon is reflecting in her eyes. And so that right away kind of gave me a little bit of a thought that maybe she isn't just pure evil. So let me just kind of read my notes here because I'm jumping around too much. So the symbol of the Black Widow comes to mind for her because, and this is the issue with why when Yuna and Tidus say this is our story, right? And it's so important that they do this because she didn't do this. Yunalesca said, it's my story. Aeon, you have to sacrifice yourself for my story. So that's why I think the Black Widow comes to mind. She devoured her husband in order to dominate or to produce children, the religion, to create in a creative endeavor, because the Black Widow will mate with and then kill the husband, well, the boy, the male, other one, and then she will then use that to have little spider babies. So anyways, Yunalesca's creative act with Aeon was to create this monstrosity, but also the religion that surrounded it that was to be passed down, right? But the thing is, she devoured her husband in what is supposed to be a symbiotic relationship. So you have the sun and the moon. You need both. The moon overpowered the sun.
Yeah, right.
And so this brings along the long dark night of Spira that would last for 1,000 years. Then night won. Night beat day.
Yeah.
And now it's been night for 1,000 years,
Yes.
right? And that's how it's been. I think that works here. So her name is similar to Yuna's, which is the hibiscus and all that. But in this game, it's meant to symbolize the night. She has serpents on her chest, dual serpents facing each other. And she also has symbols of Yevon and the other temples on her body, right? But important to note that, and so she's the little that she is clothed with is the symbols of Yevon and the religion, and also the symbolism of the serpents. So it's important to note that an interpolation between night and day is necessary to maintain balance. But when she kills her husband, she became the dominant force, and night defeated day for a very, very long time. Aeon is arrayed in gold vestments with a white cape, and get this, a purple and gold motif with green as an accent. I have questions about this, and I wrote them down, so we are going to get here. Aeon was the day, and Yunalesca was the night. She loved Aeon, as her eyes reflect his golden armor, as if she's standing right in front of him still. But in the end, her triumph was a triumph of the long and dark night. The sun, moon, day, and night imagery here is evident in the Spira map and elsewhere, right? So when Tidus and Yuna decide that neither one of them is going to elevate above the other, they decide that it's their story together, and they join together instead of one overcoming the other, and they fight together. And that's the true bond that can defeat sin, as opposed to the bond that now you kill them and then they become sin. But that bond actually can defeat sin. But okay, I'm once again getting ahead of myself because I just have so many thoughts here about there's so much going on here, and I absolutely love it. But the interplay with Yunalesca and what could have been with Yuna and Tidus were Yuna to go down Yunalesca's path, which she easily could have. It's not like she's better than Yunalesca just naturally. Right. It's just, things happen in a different way for her. But the symbolism's there, and they just kind of made different life choices, and Tidus came from a different place where he wasn't indoctrinated in Yunalesca's religion, and that kind of made the difference right here to where they could actually do something about it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I've got here is that as a monster, she looks like Medusa. So, oh man.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
It is good
Lots
stuff.
to chew on with that.
Yeah. And she also has a lot of blue on her, but silver in general, silver is the moon, more or less, right? So the gold is the sun and silver's the moon.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just love it. But her hair's freaking crazy. It looks a lot like Seymour a little bit, but because it's crazy when you first see her, but then the fight starts. It's like even crazier. Like she just went Super Saiyan, and her hair's just like wild now.
Yeah.
But her hair is the majority of the covering that she has, in terms of clothes, is her hair, right? So you would say the primary covering she has is the silver hair.
Yeah. So when you defeat Yunalesca, she apologizes to Aeon for failing to keep the hope of Spira alive. But, they're saying, we're going to find some other way to do this. We're going to find some other way. And she says, there is no other way. Even if you could defeat sin without the final Aeon, without our way of doing it. Because the final Aeon is what calms sin enough for the summoner to defeat
To jump ship.
But if you can't calm it, it's undefeatable, right?
Right.
So it's even if you could defeat sin, let's just say that was possible without the final Aeon. You, Yevon, the Immortal, would only create a new sin.
Exactly, yeah.
And this is the first time we're hearing the name you, Yevon, in the game.
Yeah, in Japanese it's Ebonju. Ebonju.
So Yevon, you, it's just backwards.
It's backwards,
but
it's a J. They do have the U sound in Japanese, so they specifically chose a J there.
Yeah.
It's actually in the song, in the Hymn of the Faith, that name.
So they're all like, who is you, Yevon, or whatever, right? But she dies there, and Tidus they leave with him being determined they're going to find some other way to destroy sin without the final Aeon.
Yeah.
Then we kind of talked about this already, but as they leave, Aeon reveals to Tidus that he is also unsent.
Well, Tidus kind of
already
figured it out.
Knew it.
Tidus is getting smarter. He's not nearly as dense by the end of this game as he was early on. He's really matured, and you can see it. They did a good job writing him.
I don't know how I didn't realize back in Guado Salam, the first time I played the game.
It was so surprising to me, too,
that
when I first played.
That Seymour basically reveals that Aron's unsent all the way back there. It's pretty obvious the way he says it. And it's how did I not get that the first time I played?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But anyway, there were a lot of hints along the way that he was unsent. Now, here's another thing, because I made a little sort of addendum clip saying, because and someone brought up in the comments that it's not just Ginham who sort of refuses to be sent, right?
Yeah.
Also, Aron has it many times. I do think there's a difference between them. Aron sort of will always walk away and put
he
distance.
Takes precautions.
And he sort of is affected by it, but he always tries to put distance between himself and Yuna. Ginham doesn't do that. Ginham uses power to make her stop.
Yeah.
Make her stop trying to send her. And somebody had an interesting theory. Again, sorry I didn't take the name down, but that maybe Ginham is closer to losing her humanity entirely,
Lulu
like a
hints
genuine
to that.
fiend.
Lulu says that she didn't see much human left in her.
Right, and so this is why Yuna needs guardians in the first place when you're fighting monsters in the world. Otherwise, she could just send all the monsters that she comes across. That doesn't work anymore. Maybe at a certain point, at a certain sort of progression of transformation into a fiend as an unsent. At some point you have to actually slay them. And this is also possibly an explanation for how they couldn't have sent Seymour even if they had wanted to. Maybe he had progressed too far, but he has at least some of his humanity left in him. It's not like Ginham, where Ginham wouldn't even speak to them anymore. So anyways, there's some gray areas and questions in this, but it is true that, throughout the whole game, Aron has sort of resisted being sent at all these points. But
I would say that Jiskel more or less delivered the sphere, and there is an important point that we come to later on in this play in the game. Which is you can send yourself. If you don't want to be around anymore and you're just done.
Accept.
You can
Micah does this.
I know. At that point, it's okay, you know what? There's probably a gradient. I assumed that all fiends were more or less the same, but there's probably a gradient. If you really are done with this and screw this, I'm out, you can just leave and you're done and you're out.
Right.
Jiskel was probably pretty close to that. He didn't have a grudge that kept him on the earth other than revealing the thing, and once that was done, he's okay, I'm done. He could have sent himself, but Yuna was there, and it just took 2 seconds. But anyone that resists being sent would likely take longer to send. And I see that, especially after seeing what happens with Maester Mika.
Right. Anyway, interesting sort of conversation about
Yeah.
who can be sent and who can't.
Yeah.
Titus then asks him why Aeon came to watch over him.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Aeon
that's a good
shows
question.
him his memories where Jecht asks Aeon to take care of his son, right? His
Yeah,
crybaby son.
Yeah.
And Aeon gives his word that he'll do it and that he'll find a way to get to his dream Zanarkand, right? Even though he doesn't know how. He gives him a promise that he'll find a way. And then I took down the line from Aeon. Being dead has its advantages.
Yes.
I was able to ride sin and go to your Zanarkand. This insinuates to me he had to be dead in order to be touched by sin and ride in there.
Yeah, in order to ride sin, yeah.
I think that Jecht being sin helped too.
Oh, yeah.
With, okay, Aeon, I'll give you a ride to come find my son in Zanarkand, right? Because sin has to be involved.
Yes.
There was somebody who was asking about,
Yes.
I can't remember who it was, someone was asking about why can't he just swim back into Zanarkand. We kind of already talked about this, but I just don't remember. I think sin has to be involved. You can't just swim there by yourself.
Yeah.
Sin has got to carry you in and out.
I have a thought too. I don't know how well this is hinted at, but is Zanarkand in the normal ocean, or is it created of water that is actually elevated up in the air?
Oh, where is Dream Zanarkand?
Is Dream Zanarkand up? It's in a physical place.
I seem to
but
remember.
I think it could be up in the air.
I seem to remember. This is an Ultimania question that we'll probably get into in episode 15.
Okay.
But I seem to remember that there was somewhere in the Ultimania where it says it's at some spot in the ocean.
And it's level with the ocean.
In like
it's
the
down.
southwestern sort of portion of the map in sort of like the larger ocean area.
Okay.
But I don't remember specifically,
we'll
and
get
that'll
to
be
that then.
answered when I have a chance to look at it again. Okay. So
I have a few more notes real quick just to get to where we're at here. About Yunalesca, I wrote that she was trying to do her best and do the right thing. She just didn't know how else to help the people of Spira. It's not even that she was misguided. It's just that she wasn't creative enough to think of something like what the Faith had dreamed up to free everyone from the last 1,000 years of torment. It's like she just wasn't creative enough.
Yes.
That's like her core fault.
She didn't think outside the box.
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, once you die, I think it's not explicitly stated in this game, but it seems to be implied with Micah and with the other people. Once you die, you don't change. Like when you die, and even if you come back as a fiend, it's like you're who you were, and that's who you're always going to be, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck at that point when you died, and you're not going to develop as a person, later on beyond that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think, and that's a good analogy towards the leaders of the religion being dead and unchangeable. Basically.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But so there's that, and then Yuna says, I can't believe what we just did after they killed Yunalesca, which is more or less what they said after they killed Seymour.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. You got this little band of bumbling fools who are trying to save the world and trying to help the church. And then they show up and they accidentally kill the leader of the church, and it was an accident. He attacked us first.
Yeah.
And then they go to this other place and they destroy the whole hope of the entire world. And they're like, well, we didn't mean to, but she was going to kill us first, And it's just funny. Wherever they go, they happen to accidentally take down an entire pillar of the whole establishment that their entire culture is based on.
Yeah.
It's so funny, and they're not even really doing it on purpose.
No. So as you leave the dome, the sun has come back up.
Yes.
And Sin's outside
He's
waiting.
right there. It's freaky and it's kind of cool, but it's fascinating because he's not doing anything.
Right. He's
just looking.
Jecht is just waiting to be like, okay, so what are we doing?
What's the news? Yeah, what happened?
And Titus tells him, I know the final summoning is gone, but I'm gonna think of something.
I'm gonna think real hard.
Just give me a little more time. And it's interesting because Sin just kind of turns around and leaves, and the airship just flies right past it.
Right past it.
And
why did the ship do that? I get why Sin didn't attack it, but why did the ship decide?
Oh, we'll just fly right by Sin.
Yeah.
There's Sin right there.
We could curve or we can go straight. The only obstacle is Sin. But let's, I think we'll
He
be fine.
doesn't seem aggressive.
Yeah, this is fine. Let's go take the shortcut through Sin.
It's just a cool shot.
It is a cool shot,
But-
and when I see the airship come back, that's what got the gears spinning for me, right?
Yeah.
So seeing our airship come back makes me think even more that there's a connection between the Al Bhed and Zayon specifically.
Oh, with
now,
the
we're
purple
going
and
back,
gold
yes,
stuff.
we're going back to the beginning of all of this. The colors, the purple and gold with the green, it looks very similar. But on top of it all is the cape. Zayon is wearing a white cape, right? And you notice there's that weird kind of cloth covering at the bottom of the ship that's always just kind of hanging there, right?
Was this like Zayon's Air Force One?
I don't freaking know. It's got red trim, which is Zayon did not have red trim, but it is like it's a light gray. It's like a dirty white cloth. Like it's a cape. It's a freaking cape.
Right.
And all of that, right? So that cloth that hangs down, it's dirty. It's hard to tell that it's white in a lot of scenes, but you get several good looks at it as we're leaving home and at this point and elsewhere. That it's like it's a white covering.
Looks like a Zayon.
And it really does. And especially as what comes out beneath it, the two, it looks like Zayon's boots, And anyways, it freaking looks like Zayon, right? Now, I don't know who started the Al Bhed or how any of that happened. It says in the wiki that Zayon's eyes were brown, but it doesn't say anything about if he happened to have a genetic spiral or something that got passed down. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the connection might be between Zayon and the Al Bhed, or if there even is one. I could be totally off base here, but I would bet, based on the art alone, that there's some kind of a connection there. They just look too similar.
Yeah, I think so too. It's with as purposeful as many of the designs are in this game. It would seem weird that would not be
Exactly.
right. Okay, so back on the airship.
But there's implications there, which is the reason the Al Bhed are like, screw this Yevon stuff.
Yes.
Zayon was our dude, and you just freaking killed him, and like.
Oh, maybe that's
you're
where the splinter
exactly.
happened.
Now Zayon wasn't the summoner; he was the guardian, but still.
Zayon was an Al Bhed, the first Al Bhed.
and he was and he was killed. And it was like, hey, we don't like what you're doing with this whole Sin business.
Interesting.
Like,
theory,
we're out, right? You guys are just going to go sacrifice people for Sin. Like, we're leaving. So I think I can imagine a possible connection.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, back on the airship. Party's trying to think about what to do next. All they know right now is that Tidus has some connection to Sin because of Jack.
Yeah.
And that maybe that'll spark an idea, and they're all trying to think of what to do. Yuna goes and bows to Sid, but he sort of like turns his back to her, and it's done in such a way to make it look like, oh, you went to sacrifice yourself, like he's like mad at her for that.
Yeah.
But really, the camera reveals he's like crying.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably with just like gratitude that it didn't happen that way.
Yes.
That she's
It was
still
an
alive.
emotional reunion.
Yeah.
And I would almost say that was the reason he turned around, was also to just hide the fact that he's crying.
Yeah, right.
Like, he's just like, oh, you're here. Don't look at me. No need. I haven't seen her for 15 years or however long it's been.
Yeah. So they're all sitting there thinking about what to do, and I actually really liked the way this happened. It was like the party is sort of split up. There's like the people on the bridge, and then there's the people over here closer to the deck, and they both have ideas that are really good, but it's only like comes together when they're connected. So it's like
yes, I like that.
Kamari, they're sitting there like, what should we do next, kind of thing. And Kamari is the one who suggests that finding Micah and making him talk would help them to learn more about thinking outside of the box of Yevon, because that's kind of the whole problem, is no one has been able to do that, to think of a way to defeat Sin outside of what the Yevon's teachings say to do, which is final Aeon. So Yuna's saying, all I've ever been taught is the Yevon's teachings. Like, I don't know. I can't even think of any other way. I wish I could be of help. And Kamari's suggesting that Micah and the Maesters, they know more about the out-of-the-box of Yevon stuff.
Yeah, the peripheral.
So we should go talk to him and make him tell us that stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff that they didn't say to us in the churches and the temples.
Once
right?
again, it's a great idea now, provided they don't get killed at Bevelle, which they didn't seem worried about.
Right.
Which was
Just
interesting.
going to fight their way in.
Exactly. But the idea why don't we just ask Yunalesca? Or why don't we just ask Micah? Like, it's becoming the simple solutions right there in front of your face.
Yeah, right.
And you're trying to think of this crazy idea, and it's like, just go ask. What's going to hurt? They're going to say no? What they don't know? Okay, then we're where we started. We're no worse off.
Right. And then you go back to the bridge, and Riku and Walker start arguing about like whose idea this was first, kind of a thing. And then Lulu kind of jumps in too. But they suggest, and they kind of just stumbled on this information, right? Probably no one else in the world besides our party knows this, because they fell through Macalania and they landed on Sin's back.
See, and this is another obvious thing where it was totally Sin's back. Sin was there just chilling.
Right.
And
listening
I didn't
to
pick up on
the hymn of the faith at Macalania Temple, and that calmed it.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, the hymn of the faith calms Sin because this sin is Jecht, and Jecht liked that song from Zanarkand.
Yeah.
It connects him back to his Jecht self and out of the instincts of sin. So we could use the hymn of the faith to calm Sin instead of using the final Aeon, which was the previous way of calming Sin.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, might as well give it a try. I mean, we know that can work. We saw that happening, right? So they kind of connect those things, and so they're going to go talk to Micah back at Bevelle. And as they're there, the guards are like, they're going to shoot him or whatever.
Waka, did you write his line down?
I did.
Oh, man.
What did he say?
Waka's just like, oh, come on, man. I can't believe these people. But it was like, dude, that was you 5 months ago, maybe, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Those guys who were like, you're an infidel. We can't allow you in Bevelle.
Yep.
That was Waka. Yep. And he's sitting there like, oh, you stupid people. Oh, I can't believe we have to deal with these people who don't know,
Yeah.
It's great. It's very ironic.
Shalinda comes running out and saves us
she's
from
been
them.
promoted.
To a captain.
Yeah, she's high up now.
This is how completely fetched the whole organization
That's what
of
Aaron
Yevon
says,
is.
Yeah.
Where they're putting Shalinda in a position in the military because they're
Aaron
all
says,
in fighting at this point.
Oh, you're short believers, huh?
Yeah, short of believers, right? Or
she's
short
like,
on
yeah,
believers.
we're having trouble.
So she tells them how Yevon is in complete chaos, and the way she convinces them to stand down is she says that it was an Al-Bed rumor that Yuna was a traitor to Yevon. That's not actually real. The Al-Bed made that up. And they were like, "Oh, what?"
And Riku,
So this came from Micah actually, not from Shalinda. And Micah realized that Yuna went to Zanarkand, and he thinks got the final Aeon. So he's like, "Call it off. We can't kill Yuna anymore."
The one thing that can help the church at this point is for another calm. If a calm happens, then it's like, people's faith will be restored.
Pick up the pieces.
Yes.
Everyone will calm down, and I can restore some order.
Exactly.
In Yevon. So he's banking on Yuna actually defeating Sin.
So he doesn't want to kill her.
So he had to come up with a new rumor to spread so that.
And think of how many times that excuse has been given for times where the church has reversed a position.
Oh, it's the Al-Bed.
Actually, the Al-Bed or the
They made that up. Don't listen
those
to them.
jerks. Screw those guys. Let's go kill them. Right.
Right. So, anyways, Shalinda sets up an audience with Micah. Micah, they go and tell him that they killed Yunalesca, and he starts losing.
He's like, "You did what?
What did you do? Are you freaking serious?"
That was their last hope.
He says, you destroyed the only method of calming sin. And then they tell him, we've got another way of calming sin. There is no other way. And he's like, Yevon's spiral of death will consume us all. So he knows about Yevon as well.
Yeah.
So they're trying to ask him, who is Yevon? Yunalesca said that. And he says, he who crafts the souls of the dead into unholy armor, an armor called sin. Clad in it, Yevon is invincible. And the only thing that could have pierced that armor, you have just destroyed. Nothing can stop it now. And this is where he accepts his death, and he's
like, I don't want to live in this world anymore.
It's useless to keep living now. I'm gone. Coward.
And
just runs away.
He sent himself. I love that.
Yep.
So in the English version, Waka says he calls him a rotten son of a shoe pup. Or
I
something like
didn't
that.
even remember that. That's hilarious.
It was a weird insult, and
Yeah.
I of course picked up on it right away because that is not what he said in the Japanese. He just basically just saying that it was BS that Micah ran away.
Yeah.
He doesn't call him a son of a shoe pup.
That's funny. But the purple hooded boy sort of appears
Yeah,
here.
and
but
I love what he
only
says.
To Yuna and Titus.
Yeah,
it seems.
no one else can
else
see him.
saw him.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
But he basically says, "Hey, come to my room."
Yeah, come to my room.
I love that he called it his
yeah,
room.
come to my room. Because he's a boy. Right?
He's a kid, you know. That's where he hangs out.
So they go down there, and he asks if they've found a way to truly defeat sin. And Titus says that they have to fight you, Yevon.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's it, yep. If you defeat you, Yevon, it will end. Tell me, what do you know about you, Yevon? And they say, well, he's the one who keeps bringing sin back every time he's defeated, and sin acts as his armor. And he says, you, Yevon, was once a summoner long ago. He was peerless, yet now lives for only one purpose, only to summon. He is neither good nor evil. He is awake, yet he dreams. I didn't buy this.
No.
You, Yevon's fetching evil.
I'm trying to think of how he could not be.
How could you portray you, Yevon, as not being evil?
Well,
he is like literally slaughtering and massacring innocent people for 1,000 years because he was pissed that Zanarkand got destroyed by Bevelle.
By Bevelle.
You destroyed my city. Fetch all of your descendants and everyone who had nothing to do with this for 1,000 years. I'm going to kill everybody so that I can keep my Zanarkand alive with my
dream people.
my faith.
Yeah, the faith. What could the kid mean by that? What could he mean?
I don't know. I literally could not see any way in which Yu Yevon is not evil.
Because we do see Yu Yevon later.
Yes.
He's not like a person.
He's fetching evil.
And, well, he doesn't even look like a person. And it's almost like Yu Yevon has become like an artificial intelligence, or not even an AI, just a script. Just like it's a computer script that just runs.
It's just a program or something, a protocol.
Now that's an analogy. I don't. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain it.
We're
but
not
the
trying
way,
to say he's literally a computer.
like
person.
he's not. It's not even really him. He's not even like
human anymore.
This kid's basically saying he's basically not even like alive at this point.
I guess I could see that.
He just exists to do this summon over and over. Like
his humanity's gone.
Yeah. Something like that, right? So he's awake because he does stuff, but he's not really awake. He's just living in some dream, all fake reality, and he's like not good or evil. I would take something along those lines.
I could see that. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So he's not actively doing this anymore. It's just a script that's just running forever. And it'll just never stop running. Now, who wrote the script to set it to run forever is an evil person. but at this point, you know, it's
he's
like...
no longer that person.
Yes.
He's
Have you seen Howl's Moving Castle?
Oh, Howl's Moving Castle.
The witch, remember, like, she kind of loses her memory and her power. And by the end, she's basically like...
She's just this old lady, like, kind of bumbling lady.
And do they, like, I'm spoiling some stuff in that movie, I'm sorry, but like she was very evil early on. But as she's kind of lost her memory and who she was, she's just not really seen as evil anymore. Like once she loses that part of her, it's like, okay, she's just like a person now, and they actually are pretty nice to her, nicer than she deserves, you know?
Well, it's like a lot of people, you know, who do evil acts or who become like bad actors in the world. It's really fear that's kind of driving.
Course. As Miyazaki also is good at showing.
Motivation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that character was exposed down into just like the insecurity. It's just like this character only represents the inner insecure person without the reaction to the fears, right? And it's just that's kind of like the core of any person who is doing all these horrible things. It's like inside they're just hurt, sort of insecure, probably immature.
Well, you would say that would apply to some degree to you, Yevon. It doesn't justify anything, but it's just here's somebody who lost everything and wrote a script to destroy the world because he was mad, and now the script is doing its thing.
Yeah. I can see that. That makes a little sense.
That's the best I got. That's the best I got for why he said that.
Even if you defeat sin with the final summoning, you, Yevon, will live.
Yeah.
You, Yevon, will join with the final Aeon. He will transform it into a new sin. You, Yevon, merges with the Aeon, then, protected by this new sin he has created, you, Yevon, continues the summoning. But you know there is no such thing as eternity if you end it. Is there? So it's interesting because it's like what they thought they were doing to defeat sin was more or less just giving it the ability, giving you, Yevon, the ability to create a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like every time someone gave their life to become the faith of the final summoning, he just takes that and, okay, I'll just go make a new sin out of this.
Yes.
So they're just giving him the means. They're feeding him the means to make a new armor.
To manufacture
again.
a new body. Yeah.
So they use the final summoning and the final faith, I guess, the faith of the final summoning, to calm Sim enough to pierce the armor. But then he just takes that and then just makes new armor out of it. And so it's again a cycle or a spiral that can't end in the way that it's been set up. You, Yevon, lives inside sin. Yuna, listen, when you fight you, Yevon, we will help you. The faith, all the faith, right? Because they're done dreaming. They're sick of it.
Exactly, yeah.
Promise me you'll summon us. I'm afraid your swords and magic won't be enough. Please call us. Promise?
Swords are of little use here.
Yep. But you know, and then he turns to Titus at this part specifically, because the camera's sort of over the boy's shoulder looking at her.
Yeah.
And then it transitions over the shoulder to Titus and says, but you know, when it's all over, we will wake and our dream will end. Our dream will vanish. And Titus says, yeah, you've been dreaming a long time, haven't you? And the boy says to him, I'm sorry about what that means for you. And he says, oh no, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I had a life in the first place because of you, is I think what that's insinuating, right? Of course, without saying that outright. So Yuna is asking, grateful about what? Like, what is he talking about? She doesn't know. He says, oh, nothing. Hey, don't make that face. Come on, we're going to go beat Sin. Let's have some cheer, okay? So he's fully embraced Yuna's role now.
Yes.
Fully embraced it.
Smile and
the guy
pretend
who
to laugh
so hard the whole time to like, no, there's got to be another way, is now not questioning whether there is any other way. He's fully embraced that this is the other way that they found, just put him in her position.
Yes. Oh, you're right. I love that flip. That's genius. That's really smart.
So it's like he fought so hard for another way. He gets his other way, but now he's the one.
And you know what's funny? That almost is like necessarily, it's almost like a law of nature, right? Where it's like this person's fate is to die. You want to change their fate. Like the Full Metal Alchemist thing, the law of equivalent exchange, right?
Yep.
Like, okay, then you die for her. Mm-hmm. Problem not fixed, because now you still don't get to be together, but it's almost like, what other solution are you looking for, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to change someone's fate, which is to die, and you're going to do it with flowers and rainbows, you know? Like, that's not going to happen. That's not how the world works.
You can't,
like, the fates demand...
The split.
Yeah, you can't. You can't bowl, you can't kick a field goal when you're bowling. It's not football. It's bowling. You got to hit one.
Yep.
Got to hit one.
Somebody was asking last week, so who is the summoner using these faith to summon Titus?
Ah, yes.
And
Ebonju.
We have it here.
Yes.
You, Yevon, is the summoner who is summoning Dream Zanarkand using those thousands of faith embedded in the wall in Gagazet. So you, Yevon, is summoning Dream Zanarkand.
I remember the thought that I had earlier, when the kid says, if we're able to end it, then it's not eternity, right?
Yeah.
It's only eternal if it's forever, but if you end it, that is what the word Aeon means, essentially. It's the eternal. It basically means eternity, and that's where the word Ev eternity comes from.
Yeah.
So the name Yevon basically means to be eternal, right? And that they're almost making a little bit of a play on that reference there when they say, yeah, Yevon is Aeon, but what if we kill it? Then it never was to begin with, you know?
Yeah,
Anyways,
right.
That was my thought.
Okay, she's, of course, suspecting that he's hiding something. She says he's a terrible liar.
Yeah.
He's not going to tell her. And, okay, so we're going to wrap up here real quick.
Okay.
Before they leave, they ask Shalinda to help them with the hymn. Go tell everyone in the world that when they see the
Yes.
airship with the hymn of the faith, that they should sing along
Join
with
along,
it.
yes.
This is total DBZ. Everyone in the world, give your power
Yes.
to Goku for the spirit bomb.
Oh, of course. No, that's
exactly what it is.
that's not how the world works, but it is also kind of sort of is how the world works, where
Sure.
people lend their encouragement. You know, they are, as I've mentioned before, the summoners and our party, right? The world of Spira is a blitzball game,
Yes.
right? And everything is acted out as a blitzball game, and there's a huge parallel between what Yuna and her crew are to do and are doing and a blitzball game. And basically, everyone else in Spira is the audience watching. And what they're saying here is, hey, do our team chant while we got the ball and while we're going. And Titus even says this later on as he jumps off the ship. He says, when you got the blitz ball, you got to score. He jumps off. But this whole game is basically an analogy with the game of blitzball, the microcosm that is the game of blitzball. And when an audience cheers, it really does have an effect on how people perform.
Yeah, you get some momentum.
Perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes you feel good. You know, people are excited. People like you. And, that's what they're asking for. They're asking for the audience to do their favorite chant.
Yep. So they go back to the ship. Rin tells Titus that Braska wanted peace with the Albed and that he would occasionally visit home in order to, sort of make some headway with that. That's how he met Yuna's mother.
Yeah.
And Sid was originally furious that they got together.
Yes,
But
he
then
was.
when Yuna was born, he sort of softened towards the idea. And that Sin destroyed the ship that was carrying Yuna's mother to home when she was going there to visit. That's what turned Braska into deciding he was going to be a summoner, because he was just like a clergyman in Yevon or something like that, right? And he was like, I'm going to be a summoner. My wife was killed by Sin. I can't let this keep happening.
Yes.
So nice little background there from Rin on the ship. All right, so that leads up to it now being time for the final showdown with Sin. The airship begins playing a recording of the Hymn of the Faith as they're flying around the world, getting everyone to join in with the song to calm Sin down so they can get inside.
Yeah.
The party goes up to the deck. Titus tells Sid that if they can't get through the mouth, then they'll rip open a new hole.
Sid just laughs.
He's just
Rip
like,
him a new
now
one.
that's a plan, right? Give him a new blowhole. Brother says that he knows what to use, and it's kind of like, anyways, leading up to this big final showdown.
Yeah.
And outside, the people of the world are singing along with the airship. They're hearing them, and they're like, hey, Shalinda, let everyone in the world know to do that. I don't know how. Maybe a broadcast.
They had a
I don't
broadcast, like
know.
a speaker.
And Titus throws Yuna's sphere that she dropped with her final message, throws it off the side of
He's
the
like,
ship.
you don't need this anymore. Yeah.
And she's embarrassed that he found it.
Very
And
Well,
we will
I do
finish
want
up
to
the game
talk.
next time.
I do want to talk really quick about the hymn, because I think it's the last time we're really
Yes.
going to sing it.
Yes.
The hymn of the faith has lyrics, and they have a meaning. The lyrics, it's all in Japanese. So the first word is inorigo, which means faith, right? And then yume miyo, which means a dream, to see a dream, right? And then ebonju is Yu Yevon. It's in the song. Yu Yevon's name is in the song. So, anyways, I'm trying to think of how they had never heard that name before.
The name Yevon is literally in the hymn.
It's in the Hymn of the Faith, and that is also the song that Titus grew up hearing.
Yes.
So that's a little inconsistency here, but we'll let it be for now. And then it says inore yo, which means to pray, and then sakae tamae is please grant prosperity, and then hatenaku means without end. So the lyrics of that song are faith, dream, Yu Yevon, pray, please grant prosperity without end.
Now,
that is the faith.
If this song came from Zanarkand, actually, did it really come from Zanarkand?
He could have heard it in his dreams, Titus. He could have heard it growing up as a background noise that didn't come from anywhere, but that was just a connection to Spira You hear me?
Yes. I was
that.
thinking, because
Or maybe the
earlier
Ghost
they said,
Kid sang it.
this song came from Zanarkand. I heard this in Zanarkand. But that was
It's
Dream
definitely not
Zanarkand.
this, yeah.
That was Dream Zanarkand, where Jekt and Titus learned that song. And the faith...
Yes.
But the faith
It's a big
came. But the
question.
faith came from the real Zanarkand.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we think that song was created in Zanarkand 1,000 years ago, what would that song have meant to them in their culture?
Is it like the melody was made in Zanarkand,
Now,
but not the lyrics?
Yevon was their leader, was Zanarkand's
You're
leader.
right. He was a real person before
So they
the
could
war.
have sang, a
Yeah,
praise
but
to you, Yevon.
Faith, dream. What this sounds like, faith, dream. It's like they're giving encouragement. This song is giving encouragement. Hey, Faith, keep dreaming. Don't stop dreaming.
Oh.
Hey, you, Yevon, keep praying. Don't stop praying.
So they're saying dream.
Keep summoning. Don't stop summoning.
Yes. So
right?
the song was invented after the destruction of Zanarkand.
Exactly, in order to encourage them to continue creating Dream Zanarkand. Don't
Yes,
stop.
don't stop.
And then the end, please grant us prosperity without end. Please let this continue, Dream Zanarkand continue forever.
Okay.
As I read this hymn, that's my interpretation of what that hymn is saying.
Okay.
And
So-
I don't know how it started or how it branched off and got into both places. It doesn't really make sense to me given the timeline.
Yes.
But I'm sure somebody has an answer to
So the song did not come from the culture of Zanarkand before its destruction. It came after, once they had set up this entire
Dude,
summoning process.
It may even just be the faith encouraging each other.
Yeah, to
like
keep
keep singing this
dreaming.
song to encourage each other.
And because the faith are thinking about that,
Yes,
that
it manifests.
manifested in Dream Zanarkand.
in both places, in the temples, by the faith in the temples, and
Who are
in Dream
singing it,
Zanarkand
and in
through
Dream
the faith.
Zanarkand
There you go.
through the
I think we
dream.
just fixed it. I think we just found it out.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Yeah, very fascinating though that this song is about Dream Zanarkand, and the people of Spira have no idea.
Yeah,
They have no idea exactly what this is saying. What I think this is saying.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I freaking really like that, actually. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's sweet. I think it's
Any
pretty
other
cool.
notes?
No, other than I had two comments that I wanted to read real quick that I didn't get to. Really good comments today. One of them being somebody, by somebody I mean like 50 people, mentioned that Yuna having a horn on her
Yes,
statue
yes.
is a direct reference to previous Final Fantasies where often the
Summoner class
summoner class
tends
will
to have a horn.
Yeah. You can see this very clearly in Final Fantasy IX with Eiko, Carol, where
Yep.
she has this big horn. And
Final Fantasy 3, I think, even the Summoner class has a horn. I think 5 has it. I think, 9 for sure.
Yeah.
5, 3, 9, I'm pretty sure. Because the Summoners in 4 don't.
Oh, don't they?
Because it's like Iridia and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah,
like
yeah.
they don't. But yeah, the typical or the classic Summoner class design has a horn on it.
So everyone mentioned that, and it's like, okay, we got it.
We get it.
So we're mentioning that here so that everyone knows that's
Yeah.
the point. And then Nick said in the comment section, he said, fantastic new episode. The discussion on what exactly the Faith were doing with their dream was extremely helpful to me since I didn't really understand the whole "you are a dream" bit when I played the first time. I like the joke about where you guys compared Titus to Pinocchio as well. They seem so similar that Final Fantasy X almost feels like a commentary on Pinocchio at times to me. They twist, that is, the father is a whale, but he's also in the whale. It goes both ways.
Yep.
But the idea of being a real boy, now that we know that Titus is not a real boy, he's not a real boy.
Yep.
How is he going to become a real boy? And this is the beautiful part. So I'm going to stop reading the comment because it was a great comment, but I'm going to take it in my own little direction here. This is freaking Pinocchio,
Yeah.
almost to a T, right? You give life to a fake person, and it goes out into the crazy world, the mad, mad world, but somehow, he doesn't know, Geppetto gets swallowed by a whale and is in the bottom of the ocean, and Pinocchio is the only one who can go save him, right? And so Pinocchio goes down, and Geppetto's being kind of funny about it, but the biggest point is that Pinocchio, in order to become a real boy, has to give his own life to save his father. He basically dies, and saving his father from the belly of a whale, Anyways, it's just beautiful stuff.
A lot of parallels.
It's beautiful stuff. So we're going to talk more about this next episode.
Yeah.
But it's something about that type of story just really grips people, I guess.
Yep. Like we were saying, I guess we were saying this on the exclusive podcast on Patreon.
Patreon, please.
There's only a certain kind of small handful of archetypes or story structures.
Yeah.
And it's like you kind of just find people gunning into this one and then sort of just, altering the details to make it their own. But there's really only like 7-ish types
yes, exactly.
of stories.
Yeah.
And you're just repeating the same things over and over and over again. We're repeating the same stories to ourselves over
as
and
much
over.
as you think you aren't, or if you find something that's really original, usually it's not to like be hypercritical. It's just like humans have been around for a while, and the corporate incentive structure behind creating entertainment is so strong that like they've really come up with the things that people want to see and hear. And I'm not going to preclude the possibility that, or exclude the possibility that at some point somebody might tell a new story. But it's been a while. I don't I don't know that even if we heard a new story, we wouldn't understand it. The whole point of stories is that our brains are wired to think a certain way and to perceive things a certain way, and things fit that pattern in our brain, and we respond with positive emotions.
Right.
You can't introduce a new pattern because it doesn't fit into the pattern, and it creates dissonance. And so you have to align your story into the pattern that already exists in everyone's brains. You can't you can change it a little bit and they'll find it amusing, but if you change it too much, it's not going to work. It's going to be too dissonant, right?
Unless you're making Undertale.
Undertale is a strange exception, and we're going to be talking about that very soon on Patreon.
On Patreon, yep. That's our next analysis on Patreon.
There are always exceptions. In some ways, it's not an exception. In some ways, it's a huge exception.
Yeah, it's kind of both.
We're going to do our best to analyze that. And
it's going to be a tough one.
It's going to be a tough one because it is a different kind of game, that's for sure.
Anyway, next week, finish the game.
Yes.
It's time to finish the game, and then all spoilers. Most of the spoilers are off the table already, but for sure, all of them will be off the table next
Other
week.
than what's the last?
Yeah, what happens
scene
in the last scene.
And don't be fooled, people. Don't be fooled. There is an after credits scene. So stick around after the credits. When you finish the game, we will be talking about it. Mm-hmm. So watch it. Don't let us spoil that part for you. And we probably already have though. But you don't know what it is if you haven't played it yet. So watch it, and then you'll find out what we spoiled. But how too late? You already finished the whole game. So.
Yep. All right.
Peace.
That's it. See you guys next week.